Most of you guys find speaking the most difficult part of learning English. So we decided to create this big, long video talking about the aspects of spoken English. What do you do if you forget a word? How to speak fast and sound more natural. How not to be afraid of speaking English when you talk to a native speaker. And how to practice English if you have no one to practice with. Watch this video because it's going to help you stop worrying and start speaking English. I am afraid to speak English. People will laugh at me. What if I start a conversation with a native speaker and I suddenly forget words? What if I just can't support a conversation? Like I won't be able to use my English. I have so many fears. What should I do? Hey guys, welcome to Bookish English. Today, we're going to talk about those questions that arise in your head whenever you are, confronted with a situation to speak to a native speaker in English. I just want to say, first of all, I'm pretty sure you've heard that many times, that it's just all in your head. But I know we need to kind of dig deeper and talk about your fears because I had those fears. Like, even now, when I speak German, because I'm a perfectionist, I get very nervous because I know I make mistakes, and I know I forget words, and I know everything like this happens, and my face turns red, and I just, and it actually starts happening. Like, when I'm relaxed, my German is a lot better. Like, if I'm in an environment just talking to friends or just talking to someone at a store, it would be like really smooth language. When I start thinking oh my God. This is one of the reasons I stopped recording videos about German, just because it's been declining and I have those fears. But I also have them in English. But with English, I understood that English is a tool. It's an instrument that I use to improve my life. And without it, I won't be able to achieve my new goals. I won't be able to get to new levels of whatever, YouTube, of my company's development. So today I'm going to start with fear number 1. People are going to laugh at me. The only time I've been laughed at, in terms of my English is, when, left in real life. Like, I get mocked about my accent a lot on social media, but it happens because I get hundreds of thousands of views. And I understand that even kittens get dislikes on YouTube, and there will be people who are unhappy with whatever I'm doing. And just because I'm doing it, they will be posting bad comments and hating me for whatever I do. But I also understand sometimes it's actually good to have that feedback because people tell me, "Oh, Marina, that was wrong. That phrase was incorrect." But they're not laughing at me. They're telling me how to improve, and I accept that with gratitude. So, the only time I've been laughed at actually happened when I was talking to my friend. And, I told him I was so hooked up with this person. Like, I wanted to say that we were really connected with a person, but I used a phrasal verb, to hook up with someone. And it actually means have a sexual relationship. And this is not what it was, not what I meant. And another time, it happened recently on Instagram. I came to a butcher store, and I posted a story that I missed his meat. And meat, in American conversational English, when you say, I missed his meat, means I missed his penis. And again, people laughed at me, but I thought it was funny. It's not and it was DMS. People, oh my God, Marina, do you know it has a second meaning? And it's not like they are angry at me for making that mistake. It was like, a friendly advice. So I've never ever had like people in real life like laugh at me, like say, "Oh my God, your English is so bad. What are you doing here?" Never ever happened in my life. And I started practicing English at the age of 14, and I was hanging out with really mean, like, teenagers can be really mean, and they can tell really bad things in your face. But never has that ever happened to me because people understand that I'm making an effort to be understood. They understand that I come from a completely different culture and that I've never spoken English to my parents or to my grandparents. So, the only exception here is social media. Like if you're speaking English on social media, just be ready to get those hate comments. And even if you're perfect in English, even if you're 120 out of 120 on TOEFL, and you post a video on how you got that score, you would still, like, if it goes viral, you would still get comments from people, "It's impossible, your English is not good enough," etc. Like, there would always be people on social media hating you. But in real life, there's like this tiny chance it's gonna happen. But it's not gonna happen, guys. Native speakers, especially Americans, especially British people, are very friendly. In real life, people who I met, people who I talked to in English, even when I was intermediate, they were really friendly and really supportive. So, it's all in our heads. And I think if you have this fear in English, like people would laugh at you, you probably have it in other aspects of your life. So, it's just another reason for you to sit down with yourself and think about, like, I don't have to be liked by everyone. And again, I am a person who has this feeling all the time. I want to be liked by everyone. I want it. I'm fighting this. Like, once I started my channels, I realized I can't be liked by everyone. But it was really hurting me every time I read something negative about myself. And it took me a while to understand and to realize that my goal is to use my talents, to grow as an entrepreneur, YouTuber, whatever, as a mom, and do the best that I can. What other people think about me, it's other people's business. They have their own understanding of reality. They have their own experience. Maybe they just have a bad day, but it doesn't have anything to do with me. If you want to dig deeper into this problem, I really advise you to read a book, The Courage to be Disliked. It's like one of those books that I started reading last year. I think last year I had this, personality crisis. But I was like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do it. I'm afraid to do this because people would comment, and they would be unhappy with what I do. And I started just doing a lot of psychological research, and I started reading a lot of books. And that was one of the books that really, really helped me. Like, it just talks about how you can't control other people's emotions. You can't control what they think of you. What you have to do is focus on what you can do the best. Focus on your goals and start and achieve them. Another thing I could recommend, watch the one on Netflix. It talks just about this woman entrepreneur who's a little ruthless. And she's not like a role model that I want you to follow, but it just talks about how she deals with all the problems that arise. When I was thinking, like, if I were in her place, I would have definitely given up, but she continued going. I really encourage you to read those books, to watch the one on Netflix, and to just read interviews related to this topic, because this would help you in your life in general, not just with English. Of course, you will realize that You know, the majority of people won't laugh at you. And if they will, it is their problem, not your problem. You're doing your best. You're practicing your English. You are putting effort into being understood by people who don't even speak your language and don't even make an effort to learn your language. Okay, psychology class is over. Let's move on to some practical advice regarding other things that you can do. So, there is another fear. What if the conversation gets too complicated and I won't be able to support it? I also get this fear. Like, for example, again, I can't really relate to this in English right now because my language is pretty, I would say, pretty advanced to talk about all kinds of topics. But with German, I can totally relate. And when people start asking me about business, I understand that I will start a conversation. I will talk about my company. But if they start digging deeper, I would be like, oh my God, this is too complicated. And in 2018, I had to have a surgery in Germany. And I was surprised I was actually able to communicate with doctors and nurses about medical stuff. Because basically, when we talk about English, we have 1,000 words that make up 86% of the conversation. And what you really need to know, if you know those 1,000 words, if you go into a specific conversation, you can always ask for definitions of, like, specific words. So it was in Germany, during that surgery, I was like, oh, and what is this in German? I can say that in English, or I can show you on Google. And once I learned, like, 5 or 7 words that I needed that were related to that surgery, the conversation became really easy. Because you don't need to know, like, the whole idea of surgery medical business vocabulary to support an advanced conversation. All you need is those 1,000 words. And also, if you're like, oh, I don't know how many words I know right now, this doesn't actually matter. If you understand this video, that means you know enough words to support a conversation. So start practicing. And if you forget a word, if you don't know the term, if you forget a word, you can just Google it on your phone with Google Translate and show your party this word, and you will be totally fine. And this is, by the way you learn this word really fast. Another question is, what if I feel shy? What if I stop and freeze? Okay, this can happen as well if you are too nervous about the conversation. The trick that helps me a lot is to pretend that you're someone else. Because again, stopping and freezing has to do something with what's going on with you internally. Like maybe you're, again, thinking that people are gonna laugh at you, and just there are so many thoughts in your head that you can't just process them. So imagine that you're a different person. You probably, if you're speaking to a native speaker, you're probably in a new country. Nobody knows you. And once this conversation is over, you will part ways with this person. So, try to pretend you're your favorite movie character. Try to pretend you're an American if you're in America. Try to pretend that you are this famous blogger that you really, really like. I don't know. Try to pretend to be someone else just for this conversation. It just lets your fears go, and it helps you become more confident when you speak. What if I offend someone? That's another fear. And one thing I wanted to remember here is that when we talk to a person, people pay attention to our body language, to our facial expressions, to our emotions, and even if you say something incorrectly in English, they would understand you didn't really mean it. And also, they would understand. Like, if they tell you about something and you, don't understand, but you just say yes, a lot of times people will tell you, but you didn't understand, right? And they would explain in another way. It's okay to say, oh, I didn't mean that, sorry. Was that offensive because my English is not good enough? It's okay. But if you're smiling, if you're open, then people will understand 100% that you didn't mean to offend them. That it was like, oh my God, I'm sorry. That is something that we're used to in our culture, or you mixed up the word. People would understand. Now, let's wrap up this video with a couple of tips. If you have an important conversation in English coming up, maybe you have an interview with a university, or I remember when we were preparing for the Y Combinator interview, it's an accelerator here in Silicon Valley. The worst mistake that you can do is actually overthink. It makes sense to prepare. It makes sense to go through questions that were asked before in this kind of environment, like go through questions that universities ask during the interview, go through questions that people are normally asked, etc. But I would say, take your time, prepare for 2 hours, but don't take too long. Because when it takes too long, when it takes days, we overprepared for a Y Combinator interview, and instead of relaxing before it, instead of just catching the vibe of Silicon Valley, we were just brainstorming how we were going to fight that small company that is trying to do the same thing, and people there didn't even know about it. Now, when I look back at it, it's important to know what you're talking about, like to tell your story, to tell why you're interested in this or that university, this or that subject. But don't overthink. Like, they would probably ask basic questions, or if they ask some complicated questions, it is almost impossible to predict what they're going to ask. So, learn some basic things, but then let yourself relax. Watch something in English. Just put yourself into that environment before the conversation or before the test so that your brain switches from your language into English. It will be a lot easier. The next tip, be nervous and do it anyway. Michael Jordan once said, being nervous isn't bad. It just means something important is happening. So, my tip here, and I did an interview with Justin Kahn on Silicon Valley Girl, and he said, don't be afraid of your emotions. Don't suppress them. Tell yourself, okay, I am nervous about this conversation I'm going to have in English. It is fine. I understand that I'm nervous because it is an important conversation. I understand that my English is maybe not good enough, and I haven't practiced a lot. But I'm going to do it anyway, and I'm going to use this conversation as practice. And after the conversation, I'm going to sit down and think what was good and what was bad. I was really bad at, analyzing things afterwards because I'm this perfectionist. And when I shoot a video, I don't want to see it just because I understand I could have done better. And this is an endless process, but I actually taught myself to look at numbers. I taught myself to actually sit down and think what I did wrong and what could be done better. And it helps a lot with your progression. So, after the conversation, sit down with yourself and think, did I do everything I could do? And if not, just have some tips for yourself for the next conversation. And I have this note in my iPhone where I just put in things that I could do better in my videos. And, I have those tips that I always look at before an important video and just remind myself that I make those mistakes. It is okay. It's good that I know about them, and I'm gonna be better in the next video. The next tip: do it until it feels normal. Just keep having those conversations in English. Keep being shy. Keep being nervous. At some stage, you're going to be tired of it, especially if you're in an English-speaking country or if you're applying to universities. Like, I have a lot of people here in the US who are applying to universities, mostly children of my friends. Oh my God, I'm so old. But they're applying to like 24 colleges at once. And, by interview number 10, you just get tired of it and you just get used to it and you don't feel nervous anymore. So keep doing it. Also, adopt the growth mindset, something we've already talked about, like, I am bad at speaking English, my accent is not good enough yet, but I'm using this as a way to practice. And I'm using this exact conversation as my way to improve. Learn to laugh at yourself. Life is simple. We overcomplicate so many things. We tend to think that this meeting is a game changer. It is not. You can always do another meeting. There are so many people in the world. There are so many opportunities. And if you don't get any result from the upcoming conversation, it doesn't matter. You can do a lot more conversations. The most important thing is that you have yourself, you have your time, you have your brain that helps you speak English. Like, don't create problems for yourself. Enjoy life. We only have one life, and I want you to go ahead and enjoy it. And look at everything from a positive perspective, especially if it's something smaller, like a conversation with a native speaker. Come on, it's gonna be fine. Life is easy. Smile. Tell yourself that if not today, you're gonna make it tomorrow. If not tomorrow, you're gonna make it in a week. It is fine. You'll get there. Hey guys. Welcome to Lingua Marina. Today we're going to talk about a psychological topic, when you forget words. Happens to me all the time. I'm talking to a person, and the worst thing, I kind of have this word in my head just right now. But now when I'm talking about this, I forgot this word. Like, it happens to me all the time, and I can totally understand you. It happens a lot at any level of English. And today we're going to talk about ways that you can navigate through this situation, and hopefully you will remember some of the methods and tips that I will give you, and you would use them later when you're talking to native speakers or just when you're speaking English and you forget a word. So first of all, a really basic tip, super basic. Try and say this word in your language. Maybe if you're from Finland, that would be a little tricky because Finnish is one of those weirdest languages where even computer doesn't sound like computer. Because if I say computer, this is a Russian word. People in America would understand what I mean. Like, you can try and make it sound more American. Computer. And people would understand because there are so many words these days that are very, very similar across many languages. So whenever you forget something, like if you really want to say a word, because there are other ways you can navigate through the situation, but if you really want to say that word, try and say it in your own language. Maybe something comes out of this. If not, no problem. I see people do it all the time here. So, I have a gardener who's from Mexico, and his English, I would say, is pre-intermediate. And sometimes he just forgets words. He would just say something in Spanish, and I was like, oh, okay, because I learned Italian. They're kind of similar languages. and that helps a lot for us to communicate with each other. The second tip, just ask the person who you're talking to remind you, was that word? And Americans use it all the time. Oh, what was that? What was that word? Oh yeah, like, what do you call it? Sorry. Oh yeah, that one. So, Americans use these phrases all the time. So just write them down, and whenever you forget a word, just ask the person who you're talking to. The next tip is to remember the stats that I'm just about to give you. So, there was this guy, a scientist, Dr. Mehrabian, and he analyzed speech and concluded that 7% of what we understand is verbal. Just 7%. 38% is vocal, like your intonations, and 55% is visual. That means that you just need to use your visual signs. The problem with phone calls here is that you can't do that, or if you're on Zoom, then you can. But this is why a lot of people struggle with making phone calls in English. But if you're talking to a real person, if you are on Zoom doing a video call, then use your hands. Use your acting capabilities to show what you mean. Like, if you're struggling to say a dog, you can say woof woof. You can say meow meow or whatever. Something I forgot a couple of days ago. I forgot the word blow kisses, like when you do this. This is called blow kisses, and my daughter loves to do that. And I wanted to ask her to do blow kisses, but I forgot how to say it, and I just said, do this. I wouldn't recommend this method during an exam, but it's something you can totally use in normal life. The next tip is actually to stop and paraphrase the whole thing. Because again, I know where it is coming from. Sometimes you either had this word on the tip of your tongue, and it just evaporated when you started saying a phrase. It is probably a complicated, super advanced word. Happens to me all the time again. And the way to deal with it is to just stop a phrase and say it in a completely different way. Because you are probably translating in your head from your own language to English, and then you forget the word, and then you're stuck. The best thing to do there is to go back to the beginning of the phrase and just say it in different words. And again, I'm not relating to words that you can forget, like object words, cat, dog, blow kisses. You can't really paraphrase something in order to remember that word, but something that brings more complexity to your speech, like evaporate, like the word that I use. Maybe go back to the beginning of the sentence. Don't say, the word just evaporated from my mouth. Say, I forgot this word. Like, use easier words. This helps me a lot. Again, this is like we're discussing different methods. This one is really advanced, like when you just want to sound too advanced. When you want to sound like a native speaker, but you realize you're not yet there in terms of your vocabulary. It's okay to go back, to stop, paraphrase, and sound like an intermediate person. But at least the other person would understand you. And there is nothing bad in sounding like an intermediate person. The next tip is to just try and come up with words yourself. Like some words in English, they're just a mix of different words, like waterfall, obviously, right? This example with blowing kisses, like you're blowing kisses, that is obvious as well. So, if you just forget a word, try to make it up. Try to take it from French or Italian because 30% of English vocabulary was adopted from French. So you can actually use that language as well if you know French. By the way, try to use French words. And of course, there are other tips that are super useful, like learning synonyms. But this is not something you would do in a situation where you forgot a word, but something you can remember now and do later on when you're studying English. Remember synonyms. Learn words and synonyms. Intelligent, smart, clever, witty, etc. Learn them in batches. This way, when you forget one of the words, you remember the synonyms. Another tip, use a dictionary that explains the word in English. Because again, when you forget a word, at least you can explain it in English because you've read the explanation. You have something there in your mind. We're not using 100% of our brain capacity. When we read something, it's somewhere there in our minds. And we've all watched the movies where people are able to memorize everything. It's just our brain is capable of a lot of things. And don't underestimate the power of using such a dictionary and reading the explanation of the word in English, because later on, something will click, and you would remember that explanation. Today, we're going to talk about finding people to practice your English language. And I know speaking is the hardest part for a lot of students. By the way, right now in the comments below, please let me know, what is your main struggle with the English language right now? I remember when I was at school and I didn't live in the US, I was desperate to find people to practice my English with. And whenever I saw somebody from abroad, I would be the first person to talk to them. I'm going to share some of the tips that are just common that other people use as well. So, first of all, baby teenage Marina, around 14 years old, 14 to 16 years old. This is, at the time when I came back from the UK for the first time, and I realized that my English is nothing close to native speaker level. And I thought I was so proficient, because I started learning English when I was 4, and then I went to school when I was 7, where we had English every single day, and I thought I am just perfect. But then I came to the UK. I couldn't understand people. People couldn't understand me. It was a complete mess, and I felt really like an outlier because I couldn't communicate with people. When I came back to Russia, I told myself, Marina, you have to solve this problem. Marina, you have to go out there and practice English. So, number one thing that I did, I started going to museums in my city, and I was lucky to be born and raised in a city called St. Petersburg, which is one of the best cities in the world in terms of architecture and museums. And we have the Hermitage, and the Hermitage is this huge museum that has a lot of art, and it attracts a lot of tourists. So I would just go to that museum. I had a free pass as a Russian student. I went into that museum and I just looked at people who were confused or trying to find their way. And I don't know how to explain this, but you can always tell whether a person is Russian or whether a person is a foreigner. So I could tell from 10 meters or 20 meters that I see some foreigners and they are lost. I would just approach them and say, "Hey, do you need any help?" I was just, I was desperate to practice English, and this is something that you can do once. I don't know if museums are open in your country or if you have any museums in your city, but try that. Just walk around the museum, look at people, see tourists, approach them, and ask them if they need any help. That helped me a lot. There were a couple of ladies who were lost, and then I showed them the way. We kept walking around the city for like an hour or so, and we kept practicing English. So that was really useful. Number 2, another thing that you can do. Find a British consul or U.S. consulate or embassy in your country and just write them an email, or reach out to them, or see if they have any events. Again, depends on the country. In my country, Russia, when I was back at school, they had a lot of events for people to just come over. Like, British Council would have weekly meetups where people who like English literature could gather. U.S. Embassy would have different events, like Flex, which is kind of a competition where winners can go to the U.S. But even if you take part in that competition, you get to talk to people from the embassy, Americans. And then another thing the U.S. Embassy did, they organized movie nights, and again, you could come there and talk to people. And this is what I did. I was a subscriber on their Facebook pages. I was following them everywhere, and whenever I had time to attend the event, I would just practice English. And these were my favorite types of events because you're not just talking to random people. You're talking to people from the embassy, and they were a huge inspiration for my future career because I looked at them and I thought, I want to be like those people. I want to travel the world. I want to spread my culture around. And I would always ask them, like, how did you end up being a consul? Or how did you end up working in an embassy? These are my favorite types of events, so definitely reach out to those organizations and definitely follow them everywhere. In terms of like social media, not like stalking, follow them on social media and see what kinds of events they organize in your city or in your country. Number 3, there are also other types of clubs and communities for English speakers. I was a part of such a community, again, in St. Petersburg. It was a really small community, maybe 20 people. I was introduced by a friend from school, and he attended their events regularly. But basically, what they did, they would invite someone, even Russian, like they would just invite someone who's good at English to speak about something. So, we had a lady who wrote a book, and she was talking about this book in English. Oh, we had a mayor of Edinburgh who just came to St. Petersburg. He was talking about Edinburgh. We had somebody who was translating English books into Russian. We had a CEO of a store where they sold books in English. So, different interesting people, again, holding conversations in English. Google something like this. You would definitely have something, at least online, something that you can attend. Oh, we're going to talk about online resources a little later in this video, but I want to focus on offline first. I don't know, I like offline communication, and I've been missing offline communication a lot. In the past year when the whole thing started, if you think that your English is not enough to start speaking, first of all, you're wrong. If you understand this video, you probably have a lot of knowledge to help you start speaking. But the second thing that you can do is take one of my courses. I have a course that is specifically for people probably like you, intermediate, have a lot of knowledge, but are afraid to speak. We focus a lot on how to actually start speaking. We focus a lot on how to build your speech so that it sounds natural, like all the vocabulary that you can use, grammar that you can use, The course is called Intermediate to Advanced. It starts every month. It lasts 30 days, and there you also have groups where you can communicate with others. We have special chats for people, and this is a great way to find a speaking buddy and also improve your language skills with me. The classes are pre-recorded, so you can take them from anywhere, anytime. You will get tests after every module, so you will be able to practice whatever you just learned. And I've created this course with a professional teacher, Vania, who's also not a native speaker, but you won't be able to tell because he's just mastering this pronunciation. Like, he's amazing at that. The link will be below, and you will have a special promo code because you watched this video. The next thing that you can do is go to meetup.com. I don't know if it's available in your country necessarily, but I also know that even people who come to the US, they struggle to practice English because they end up living in a community of people from their country. And I know there's like a huge community in New York, a huge community of Russians. And I was in that neighborhood, and everything is in Russian. Like, if you go to a bank, it's Bank of America, but everything is in Russian, and people are Russian, you know. And I know there are Chinatowns, there are India towns, and a lot of those smaller communities, which are great in terms of, like, when you come there, you feel like at home. But if you're trying to practice English, it might be really hard. So, if you are in that situation, go to meetup.com and see what kinds of events are organized around your area and attend those events. Again, they're probably all online right now, but I'm not sure because it depends on the country where you are. In California, almost everything is still online. But the thing is, this site, meetup.com, has a separate page for people who want to practice languages, and they have different groups all over the globe in small and big cities. All the links will be below, so you will have all the resources that you can use later on when you decide to start practicing English. And I hope that you decide right after this video, because practice makes perfect. Another thing that I've seen trending on different social media like Instagram, Facebook, WhatsApp, etc., especially because I'm an influencer and I get a lot of DMs from people like, "Oh, can you practice English with me?" Or, if I organize a group, I have like a big Telegram channel, and some people complained that they became a part of this Telegram channel and they just got random DMs from people who want to practice English. I don't think that's the best idea, just reaching out to people and cold texting them like, "Can you practice English with me?" Because it is a little weird. It might work, and I found a friend in Germany this way. I was just randomly texting people on Skype to practice German, and then we actually met in person. Not a friend, but like a person I know, and he was willing to communicate with me. He was the same age, and it was kind of okay. But this is the only thing that ever worked for me in terms of like cold texting people. What you can do is you can join IELTS and TOEFL groups on Facebook and WhatsApp, or whatever you're able to find in your country and your city, or whatever you're able to find online. Because when people are preparing for TOEFL and IELTS, they tend to be more serious. Their English language skills tend to be better, and this would enhance your experience. There are also some other apps that were created specifically for finding a speaking buddy. The apps are Speak Native, OpenTalk, Speaky, Halo, and there are many others. From all the platforms, I really like Speak Native just because you have to create an introductory video about yourself before you start communicating with others. and that really helps you determine whether you want to talk to that person, because you want to see their level of English, their interests, etc. And when you have this introductory video, it really helps. Let's talk a little more about offline. So, whenever you're planning your next travel, think about taking a language course instead of just being a tourist. And I've been promoting this for years. I'm a product of language travel. My company, LinguaTrip, helps you guys travel around the world and book courses all over the world. So, if you are thinking of going to the UK or Canada or another English-speaking country, just make your research. Because whenever I compare staying at a hotel versus taking a course and staying at a local host family, the second option is always cheaper because it is a student option. You get student rates, and you get to practice English a lot. You get to communicate with students from all over the world, and of course you get to communicate with native speakers because all the teachers and schools are native speakers. Another thing that you can do, I don't know if you want to do it, but I did it, is just calling American companies. Again, you can get a Viber app, maybe pay like a couple of dollars to make calls, and you will get like unlimited calls for a month. Just call American companies and ask them. Like if you're dreaming of going to New York and staying at this hotel where they shot Home Alone, if you want to stay in the hotel, just call them and ask, "Hey, I wanted to ask if you have any rooms available for next week, and what's the rate? Can I get a discount?" Like, just that kind of thing. It is their job to answer, and who knows, maybe you'll end up coming. And the last, but not the least, my Instagram is a resource where you can find a lot of people. And I feel that people on Instagram, in terms of like writing down in comments below, they're more responsive than on YouTube. So if you just go to my Instagram, subscribe to my profile, and then whenever I post my next post, you can just write in comments below that you're looking for someone to practice English and you're from this country. Like, talk about yourself. I am a student of this university, from this country, and I'm looking for somebody from another country who doesn't speak my language to practice English. Because my audience is really international, I have people from all over the world, and good chances are somebody would respond. Just make sure that you write that comment very soon after my post comes out, because this is when it gets a lot of traction, a lot of attention, and this is your way of finding a buddy. So, in the previous video, I gave you 8 methods to start practicing English right away. Let me know down in the comments below which one you would start using now, and please go into details. I'm going to read your comments. Hey guys, welcome to Bookish English. Today, we're going to talk about improving your speaking skills in English. I hear this so much. Marina, I can't understand English, but I can't speak it. Whenever I see a native speaker, I want to hide. Whenever I hear people speaking English, I want to hide. What do I do? How do I overcome the situation? So, my best advice here would be, like, talk to natives every single day. Yes, you would be scared at first, but then you're going to get better and better. And this is what study abroad trips are for, and this is why I started LinguaTrip, where we help people find a study abroad program. By the way, the link will be below. Some English-speaking countries are open and welcoming English language students, but I know that not everyone can afford going on those trips, and I know that some of you have never seen native speakers in your life. That was my case when I lived in Russia. I would go to different museums, and I would listen in the streets if there were any native speakers, and I would try and approach them because I needed to practice my English badly. But you can start preparing yourself now. You can start preparing for that situation where you will encounter a native speaker, and you will start your real English conversation. So, tip number 1 is to have a cheat sheet. If you watch my channel for a while, you know that I've created a lot of videos, like 50 common phrases in English and 25 common phrases in English. The thing is, when you learn a language in phrases, it's a lot easier to speak it compared to when you learn English or another language in words. Because once you learn phrases, you know how to communicate using those phrases. So, having like a cheat sheet where you have those 50 common phrases in English written down, learn some of them at least. Like, how are you doing? Instead of thinking, oh, what should I say? How are you? Or how's your day going? Whatever, you learn one. How are you doing? And you know what this phrase means. Learn all of those intro phrases like I wanted to ask you, or I was just wondering if, all of those phrases again. They take away the pain of thinking, how should I phrase this? And once you're pronouncing this phrase, you can actually think about the content that comes later. This advice also works for exams. So, for example, if you're taking TOEFL or IELTS, and if you're afraid of the speaking part, learn the templates. Learn the phrases. They're going to help you sound smoother. And the same with conversational English. Learn the phrases, learn the structure. Write down all the phrases into your phone, have them in notes, and use them when you speak. The next tip is to chat with either Siri, Amazon Alexa, or whatever you have on Google. Okay, Google. I've noticed that so many times when some of my Russian friends started talking to Siri, she would not understand what they meant because of their pronunciation. And this is very good practice, because if Siri does not understand you, something is wrong with your pronunciation. Yes, sometimes they have bugs, and sometimes you just pronounce the word in a different way. But the thing is, it is really helpful because you're getting instant feedback. If Siri didn't get you, then something was wrong. The next tip that I use a lot. I used to use a lot. I no longer use it because I think I've mastered this. But anyways, when I was not living in the US, I would talk to myself every single day. And whenever you're doing something in your head, just say it. I am recording this video for my channel. Oh, I just got a message from my friend. I'm about to call my mom. I'm about to go to bed. And whatever you can do in English, just do it in English. Just talk to yourself in your head. If you pronounce that, that's even better. Because sometimes, when we're thinking about something in our head, we just, if we forgot the word, we just skip it. But if you're trying to pronounce it, you're like, oh my God, I forgot this word. I need to look it up, so pronounce everything where you're thinking. When you're home alone, it's a lot easier. The next technique is called the imitation technique. When you watch something on TV, you watch something on Netflix, you watch something with subtitles on YouTube, you can hear a phrase, read it, then pause. Not only try to repeat this phrase with the same intonation, but try to paraphrase it. Try to use some different words because in this way, you would be sure that you understood the phrase and you would be practicing other vocabulary as well. So, when you pause the movie, when you pause a video, Just imagine that you're the character and try to pronounce that phrase in the same manner, replacing some words. I also suggest that you exaggerate whenever you're mimicking someone, because it's always like that with the language. If you want to sound more natural, you would sound like you're being a clown to your brain, and you would sound like you're exaggerating a lot to your brain. And that's the right thing to do, because when you are practicing a foreign accent, it would sound foreign to your brain. So, try to exaggerate as much as you can. Whenever you sound like a crazy person to yourself, that means that you're on the right track. And if you do everything that I mentioned in this video, your goal is to start thinking in English. That is a little hard. It's like meditation. When you meditate, people tell you that you have to stop thinking at all. And whenever you notice that you're thinking about something, you just notice that you're thinking about something and stop. Again, the same technique with thinking in English. You think in English, and then you realize you're actually thinking in your own language. You don't punish yourself. You tell yourself, okay, I was actually thinking in my own language, so I just stop here, and I try to think in English again. And then again, once your brain tells you, oh my God, let's think in my own language, you switch back again. The more you surround yourself with English speech every single day, the more you start thinking in English. That's just the way it works, and it is okay that after some time, you would comment down below here and say, Marina, but it's impossible to think in English when you don't live in an English-speaking country. And I would totally agree with you. But practicing the skill before going to an English-speaking country would really help you because I tried to do that. And when I came to the UK, after week 1 of not speaking my own language, I started thinking in English. Of course, when I came back home, I started thinking in Russian again, but then I mastered the switch. So right now, whenever I have to speak English, I think in English, and whenever I have to speak in Russian, I think in Russian. And then the next level is switching between languages, because there is something I don't like doing, but I keep doing it. Using English words in my Russian speech, which really makes it a little dirtier. But that's a whole new game. This is like the advanced level, and once you master this, you're like upper advanced. Thank you guys so much for watching this video up to the very end. I hope you enjoyed this content, and I hope it would help you speak English faster and better. By the way, if you want to sound more American, if you want to practice American speech, we have a whole course for you, prepared by my friend Vanya, who's an amazing American accent expert who mastered it himself, who taught me my American accent as well. The link will be below. Hey guys, welcome to my channel. In one of the last live streams, you asked me, Marina, what do I do if I understand the language but I cannot speak it? Guess what? I have the same problem, and I can give you a few tips that really helped me overcome this problem. So if you're interested, please continue watching this video. Back to San Francisco. Thing number 1 that you have to understand is that our brain is a magic thing. It actually has all of the information, because sometimes you think, oh my God, I have been learning English for 2 years and I don't see the progress. But the thing is, you've actually learned a lot of stuff during these 2 years. You've learned vocabulary, you've learned grammar, you've learned how to speak, but guess what? You haven't had practice, and that's your problem. Like, everything is inside, everything is there, but you need the stressful situation that would help this information come out. How do you create the stressful situation? Advice number 1. Okay, you don't have to follow it, but at least listen to it because it helped me. Oh my God, it helped me. Like this was one of the best things, not the best, but second best. I started a YouTube channel in English, and I started this exact channel that you're watching. If you go back to my very first video, oh, you're gonna hear that I speak in a completely different manner, and I had to cut out so many things because I started it when I was back in Russia, and I didn't have a lot of practice in English. But I knew that I had to be regular with my videos, so I switched on the camera and started talking to the camera, and this is exactly what you can do. You don't have to post them and make them public, but I would advise you to do that, because YouTube actually changed my life. You can make money with it. It's a great tool to meet new people. It's a great tool to interact with people in the comments. I would ask you to shoot a video on a topic that you love and where you think you're an expert. Post it on YouTube. There is an option to make it unlisted if you're afraid, but when I started my YouTube channel, I was also afraid, but I never shared it with my friends, so I just posted and made it live. By the way, if you decide to make a video on YouTube, please tag me and tag language so we can see this video, if you're not afraid, of course. Another advice that I will give you. Of course, you have to talk to native speakers, but I understand that sometimes when you start talking to them, you're like, I don't understand something. Sometimes they tell something using some background knowledge I have no idea about. Well, it's okay, and I'm happy to explain some concepts that they may not understand. So don't be afraid to ask people to repeat something if you don't understand. Ask them what they meant. It is also very important to stay proactive in the conversation. So even if you don't understand, again, ask questions. Maintain eye contact. I know a lot of you come from cultures where you don't look people in the eye, and I come from the same culture. I see a lot of Russian people, like, staring at the table when they talk. Don't do that. In America, people look each other in the eye, and that's the gesture of friendliness, and that means that you understand the culture. Another thing, in some cultures, people would not shake hands with women, or it would be like a weird handshake. We did like this. No, in America, it's a firm handshake, even with, girls. I shake people's hands when I go into meetings, so follow these cultural tips as well. Dominant handshake. I think America is one of the best places to study English, especially if you're interested in something else apart from English. Like, I am interested in entrepreneurship. I would come to San Francisco, then have classes in the morning, and then research meetup.com in the evening so I can meet fellow entrepreneurs. Visit offices of big companies. If you love Hollywood, go to LA. If you love design and fashion, that's New York. I love how diverse this country is, and how every city is like the top city in some particular sphere, like, business and entrepreneurship. So, select a city and come and travel. The coolest thing is that when you travel, you encounter English everywhere. I walk now, and if I want to buy something, I would just have to speak English, because nobody speaks, some people speak Russian here, but this is definitely not the language I'm going to use here. So you would have to practice. If you are coming here for the first time, I would recommend staying with a homestay, because you can stay with locals and you can practice English 24/7. You want to be more independent? There are also student residences where you stay with people from other countries and, also communicate 24/7. But when I traveled for the first time, for the second time, for the third time, for the first time, I always stayed with homestays because I just love local people. I love to connect with them and ask them questions and, you know, ask them to show me the best places around and, just learning. How people live here? Symptoms for the conversation. Use really simple words and don't overcomplicate what you want to say. Like, it's okay if you don't give 10 examples of the phenomena that you're describing. Use the words that you understand and that other people would understand, so they would answer you with the same words. Because if you overcomplicate things, people will repeat you in overcomplicated phrases. Don't do that. Another thing, always have a really clear call to action. Maybe before calling a company or before talking to a native speaker, write down what you need from them. Like, have it on a piece of paper or maybe in the notes on your iPhone so that you know what to ask for. And again, you know what's the goal of the whole conversation. That's theory. What you need to do, again, you need to practice. The best progress that I had speaking English was actually when I traveled to the UK. I was 14, and imagine, Marina, like straight A student at school, thinks that she knows everything. She's the best at English. She comes to customs in the UK, and people ask her something. She doesn't get it. I didn't get what they told me. I was like, "Hello, my name is Lana Brain." "Yes, what?" Then I just didn't understand what they told me. And that's the problem. Like, you have to create those stressful situations where you put yourself in an environment where everybody speaks English, and you can easily do it by traveling, by coming here to a language school. And I've done 5 language trips in my life, and they definitely changed my life. They definitely shaped me as a person. So let's go to a real language school here in San Francisco, and I'll show you what it looks like to be there as a student. Let's go. Would you laugh at somebody who has an accent? Absolutely not. I love accents. Yeah, it's part of, that's part of learning a new language. You're always going to have an accent. A lot of people think accents are really cool. That's what I keep telling people. Sometimes, like, I have an accent, I won't be able to talk to other people. Like, I love when people speak Russian. Like, I love when they try. It doesn't matter if you do like 100 mistakes in a simple sentence. I would just, do my best to understand you. So same with English. You wouldn't laugh at people, right? Not at all. You would just encourage them to go out and practice. Excursion trips to LA, Las Vegas. It's not much, but simple to have a choice. Spencer, how old was your youngest student? We have 16-year-olds, 16 to 17-year-old students. What would you tell a student, 16, 17, afraid to travel alone? This is like their first trip. I would say, be brave. It's a great, fantastic experience to come out here on your own, live on your own, and you do learn a lot about yourself and about your ability to, go somewhere and travel. My school, I went there for like a short class. Which one night? New York filmmakers I saw on YouTube. Which video? A video how to improve better school in GMAT. I subscribe your channel. Oh my God, it's so cool. Thank you so much. And where are you guys from? South Korea. South Korea? Going to South Korea in August? I'm so excited. Yeah, Vietnam, Cambodia. Wow, F and V. Could you give me one word that starts with F? Familiar. And then, what's the word that begins with V? Volt. You say? Yeah, like electricity. And I want you to write them down on your whiteboard. So, for example, if I say ferry, you could write ferry, Ferry. But if you mishear me, you might write down this one by accident, Very. Reply with the president's recommendation. With the president's recommendation. H is adverse, an adverse. I is despite, his despite. J is claustrophobia, claustrophobia. Are you guys going to take the... We are preparing, but we not just plan, but I have taken GMAT. You can ask me anything. I would like to ask you too. I guess, you got 116 for TOEFL? 117. Thank you so much. Thank you for listening. I really enjoyed the class. Nice to have you from class. I hope you learned something. I have, yes. Hi guys. Hope to see you soon. Bye-bye.